And we have 10 questions. So, we've got about an hour, and we'll see if we can get through all 10 of these questions, which will take us from before the pandemic to preparations for the future. So if you have questions, please post them, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to get through these, and we'll also have some time for additional questions at the end. So I'll start with the first question, and then we'll let the panelists chime in with their contributions. So the first question, we'd like to begin by setting the stage for all of you today, and have the schools that are on the panel, have them share what was the tech situation like at your school before COVID?
Well, I'll start. Our situation wasn't like the one school that was pushing their cart up the hill, fortunately. 5 years ago, when we became a partnership school, my one ask from the partnership was to have every third, fourth, and fifth grader have a device. And it was about a year after that we met James, and really liked the application Skies Learn. So we purchased that for every student in third, fourth, and fifth grade. And it was a blessing, because when we did go into distance learning, there wasn't a big transition for our third, fourth, and fifth graders. Our K through second graders did have to, learn Skies and learn how to use a device on a daily basis. But for our third, fourth, and fifth graders, it was an easy transition.
For us at Quincy Jones Elementary, very similar. Of course, it's always hard to say, because there's certain schools that have a little bit more money, other schools don't, whether you're Title I and you're not. So you're always trying to, build your technology, right? Build whatever you can with your budgetary stuff. So I began by first equipping the teachers with the right tools for them to be able to have the most updated, latest tools, and then began to upgrade what students might have. Now, for us, prior to the pandemic, or this is my third year here, it was a cart per grade level, and you rotated it, or you created a little schedule between grade levels, and slowly we began to build up our carts by letting go of some things that we may have not wanted to go, and slowly we began building it. So by the time the pandemic hit, we had built enough that we were one-to-one. It just happened. We weren't planning on the pandemic, but it was a few years of saving, and then just investing in children, investing in their technology, investing in the teachers, because I think the teachers really needed the right technology for them to be able to, transfer this to children.
I'll go next. Good afternoon. I'm Rene de Leon, Hoover Street. This last year was my second year as a school principal, and I adopted a school with great structures, but that lacked the tools, those 21st century schools. So by the time the pandemic hit, I think we had a one-to-one in fifth, fourth, and third. And we had the rolling cart for second, and first grade, just the computer center in the classroom, right? And then of course we had the antiquated computer lab where people would go and visit technology from way back in the day. But that's where we were. My upper grade teachers, having had technology a little bit longer, were engaged with Google Classroom. And so the engagement, the learning through a digital platform was, there was some of that. So the culture, the learning culture was one that made it easier for those children, most specifically because they knew their single sign-ons. So that helped with the transition. But I think for the most part, We were able, now we're at a place where we're one-to-one, obviously, but I think for the most part, we were like every other school. We had the tools, but using them as those tier one, the second category of schools for the most part, not necessarily for for the third level, which only the exceptional teachers I believe were there.
Hi, James. I'll go next. Lori Gambero, principal of Cortines Grand Arts High School. And just want to say it's just a pleasure to be here with everyone. For us, last year was my first year as principal, so I've technically been on the campus with kids about 6.5 months. And so what I walked into was the same situation that most of you are saying. We have 10-year-old, 20 computers in the library. We have four labs, but one is completely outdated. And we had rotation of carts per department, right? So the tech was not completely there. So last year, as a Title I school in the second allocation, we invested every math teacher to have a Chromebook cart. Of course, we were going to get those in March and April, and right, we went off for COVID. And this year in the budget, I put in for every English teacher to have their own cart, and also to update the lab, the one lab that's not functioning, and then to update our library. So we're starting to update, right, the technology needed. So, and then we're going to talk about with other questions when skies came in, what that looked like. But that's where we were as a school. And so we are upgrading, as we speak, our resources for next year.
Thank you. Great. A lot of similarities. So then we'd love to hear from all of you looking at the very next step. What happened when COVID hit? What immediate steps did you all take?
For 20th Street, kind of had a sense of what was going to happen. So the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade did check out their devices on the last day before the shutdown. But for the rest of the school, you know, it's just a process of getting devices that work, creating a system to check them out. But, you know, that's all the systems and the hardware that needed to be in place. What I started to worry a little bit about was that those staff members that were not using Skies and how we're going to bring them up to speed to start utilizing Skies or any other blended learning programs. And fortunately, we have a really excellent tech support system at our school. And so they supported not only with the hardware and the systems, but also helping teachers navigate this new environment. And then immediately talking to James about what we could do to support the teachers through professional development, and knowing that Skies was that one program that really engages students. So they're not passive learners, but active learners in so many different aspects. And so jumping on board to purchase unlimited professional development with Skies was huge. And as a result, we've had almost every staff member use Skies this year. I think only 1st grade kind of has been late jumping on board, but I stated to them that they need to get those kids on the 2nd semester, because now they're going to be expected to use those platforms when they go to the next grade level. And we don't want them to just start learning next year. We want them already to be prepared. So we've had a pretty smooth transition in that aspect.
For Quincy Jones, it was different. We did not send children off with devices. We held off to see what protocols might be in place. But I think it really became about just being real, acknowledging the stress, the uncertainty, the fear of COVID. So really working on social and emotional with my teachers, getting them to understand, like, we're going to transition and we're going to do this, and really building their capacity in using Zoom, because how else might I communicate with them? So we began with Zoom. You know, how do we now begin to connect? And, you know, it was rocky at first. And then immediately we began to set appointments voluntarily on weekends or on weekdays with James and Julius, and we asked for support. We had just been introduced to SKYS in January, and we began our voluntary support with our teachers right before the pandemic, so few were on board. But you know what, I have to tell you, it organically happened because I began to set up, hey, who wants to learn about SKYS? You know, it covers all these little things, and let me teach you how to use Zoom. And offering voluntary PD on a weekend to say, hey, we got this. Let me show you some tools that you might be able to do, and not just SKYS, but just in general. How do you use Zoom? How do you share a screen? The little basic stuff. And organically, there were teacher leaders who began to help each other, and they started Zooming each other, and then they became very comfortable. So by the time we were Zooming with James or Julius, it was like, how do we do that? How do we, post a card for those teachers who were behind? And then naturally, all the other teachers became leaders, and they became little experts, and they would set up appointments with the teacher experts who knew how to do the Schoology sync, or who knew how to put the little SKYS link somewhere. So, but most of it was having a lot of one-on-one with the teacher leaders within SKYS, where teachers would schedule their appointments and say, hey, show me how to do this. And they were available all the time, and our teachers really took advantage of that. And now it's just flourished. You saw Ms. Dickinson's lesson, and that's just a history lesson. And it's amazing how it's transitioned from, February to now, where it's a platform that's used for synchronous and asynchronous, and for children to be able to check in as well.
Well, Hoover's a different boat, because we did not know who James or Julius were. We had no idea what SKYS was. So we came in, I'm not sure when we came on board, March, April, May, maybe late April, early May. And so we were drowning, most of us. Our upper grade teachers, they had a better handle on technology, let's just say. Our lower grade teachers, they were packet masters and just sending out packets. Eventually, like Mrs. Arellano said, the cream rose, and we too began the voluntary PDs, teacher, grade level ILT, or just the techie at every grade level began to volunteer the services. So it was a lot slower for us, and we were in not the best of places. And it turned out that we heard about SKYS, and that's where for my school, we made a tremendous shift, right? And so, we came late. We typically at our school don't jump on the fad or the fancy card, right? We think about it, we talk about it, and prior to going full board, we were lost, honestly, because I knew in my heart that the quality of instruction was nowhere near what we expected. And not until I saw the tool that I then said, this has to come over to Hoover. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I was very clear. I was going to allow crawlers, walkers, and runners. It was not mandated. And I knew the tool itself would create enough inertia where I'm very comfortable saying that I don't feel I have crawlers. Most are runners and walkers. So that's the word organic totally resonates with Hoover. But Hoover was not in a very good place come early April. It was not until late April that this tool helped us out quite a bit.
And I'll add to that. It was we were in a good place, very difficult, right? We're a dual mission school, so we have arts and academics. We have 93 arts courses. So, and then we have academics, right? So the, the whole thing of, how we do arts at home and all of that. So the week of the shutdown, we made sure that we got our specialized population that needed, Chromebooks, right? And then we did a series of, just like other schools, distribution days of getting mini distribution days, hotspots, right? Chromebooks, and our teachers, just like the other schools, right? Zoom, right? Just learning Zoom and getting on Zoom, and how am I going to transform my lessons of arts and academics onto Zoom. English a lot was using Google Classroom, right? And some other, subjects. And so I was in a PD with Local District Central, and I was first introduced to SKYS. And to be honest, I thought it was just for math, right? It didn't make the connection to me at that time that I was introduced to it, that all subjects could use it. So I take it back, I think it was around April, and I take it to my math department chair, and then we set up a meeting with James. Because I wanted him to show my math department chair SKYS and what she thought and all of this. And then we went to the math department and did, how's that going to work? What do you guys think about math? And then we brought it to a staff meeting, right? James came, thank you, and just showed, an overview of SKYS. And then we created a survey, a very detailed survey of, this was like in April, right? Because we all know the start of school. I wasn't saying starting right now, let's just get through till June last year, and then let's plan for the beginning of this year. Did a survey of how many, teachers would use it and how they felt about it and what more support they needed. And so we had a pretty strong percentage of students that said they would use it. So I said, we're going to go for it. And just like other schools, right, teacher leaders popped up. Miss Ingy, who you saw her lesson, she was day one, man. Like, she was in it to win it. She was getting it. So we have something called PD lounges, optional PDs for drop-ins, right, for our teachers. And so she did some PD lounges. I know the one-on-ones James did. I actually asked SKYS staff to come back again for some of our teachers that were struggling with it, making sure the cards and all of that. So I know we have, I know it was 18, but we have 17 teachers right now, but we do have 62 teachers, right? And so it may seem low, but for a high school using it, and the cool thing about SKYS is it's used in all of our subjects. There's a teacher in all of the subjects using it. We got a music teacher using it, visual arts teacher using it, theater teacher using it, and then we have the academic teachers using it. So it's a mix, actually, just across the board, which is great because it's just another outlet for our kids to use. And you can hear from Miss Ingy, student engagement, right? And especially at a high school level. I'm not sure elementary, most cameras are off. It's jigging to get the kids to engage in the lesson. And so SKYS helps with that, as well as Miss Ingy has stated about getting the student participation. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Great. So I think you guys have shared quite a bit about this. You can feel free to add, but I'll move on to question 4, which will take us to more current times. And I just want to point out it was just less than 2 weeks ago when we passed a significant milestone. I think we all knew where we were on Friday the 13th. That's March 13th, 2020, when we were at school and we got the notice that we wouldn't be in school on Monday, that we had to just pack up and go home. And so, in this transition, I think something that makes your schools unique is the high percentage at which your teachers are now utilizing technology. It's quite remarkable to hear some of these stories that you're sharing. I get to see your SKYS data, so I have some insight, and your teachers are among the highest. And so I'd like each of you to share what you think contributed to that. I'd like to spend a little time on this because I know it's a particular a topic of interest. Beyond tech, now that we all have tech, beyond tech, what is needed to have a successful community with tech implementation? How do you build capacity at your school sites?
So for 20th Street, SKYS is pretty easy to use. It's very engaging. So it works for both teachers and the students in that aspect. And then you'll find that there'll be individuals that, like Ms. Bahena, who presented earlier, one of her lessons. She was, a veteran teacher who wasn't very tech savvy, but has really taken SKYS and really utilized it to really have an impact on her teaching and engaging students, because it is easy to use. It helps her organize her lessons, and so that any parent or any administrator who looks at Schoology and wants to see what they're doing, it's very easy to determine what the lessons are for the day. Um, and like I said, in our school staff, there's some teachers that are really like it. So then they start supporting their colleagues, and all of a sudden it becomes this community where they're just learning from each other and supporting each other, sharing lessons. And the way you build capacity is, one, take advantage of the services that SKYS Learn provides, but also identify your school team members that are really savvy and really like using it to help support others.
Well, for us at Quincy Jones Elementary, it's evolved, you know, like everything else, we've evolved this past year, and this has evolved. And I have to say, it has to do with our why. Because once we went into the pandemic, we had to go, why? Why are we still teaching? Whether it's at home or not, you know, why do we do what we do? And ultimately, it came down to, we want our kids to be successful. We want our students to somehow collaborate. We want our students to create stuff and be able to communicate. So having that intact was important. That, you know, the building closed, but not school, right? So we started with our why. And once we had our why and reframed ourselves and say, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it, you know, given the cards that we have, and what tools might we have, and what tools might we use in order to continue exposing our kids to the 21st century skills. So that helped. As a leader, for me, what was very important is to model it. So I use SKYS all the time. I would put our PDs on SKYS. I would record myself for my assemblies. I would record myself for, things, and put things on SKYS for them. So I began to model a different perspective, right? I don't teach, a math lesson every day, but then, my principal uses it too for other means of communicating out there. So I use that. One of the things that I used to definitely leverage it was the idea of how might you show that you are creating standards-based lessons besides your lesson plan book, right? Because if you notice Ms. Dickinson's class, it shows a narrative. It's like, I'm teaching history, this is my objective, this is my standard, without having to plan in a plan book, and then I have to write it on SKYS. So it just organically became a way where, oh, Ms. Arellano, yes, I can show you where my standards-based lessons are, and my kids get to see it, right? Because kids are supposed to know what they're learning, but then the administrator also wants to know, so I can always check their SKYS card. Two, we also began to talk about feedback, right? Feedback is, when we look at the TLF, the three main thing is feedback, student-to-student participation, and then we've got to make sure they're standards-based. So I was like, hey, look, feedback is embedded. You can record yourself, the kids can record themselves, you can type it, they get it immediately. So the buy-in was there. The major things that administrator might be looking for, it organically lives. And most importantly, it was why. You're not doing the feedback for me. You're doing the feedback because the kids need to know how to improve their learning. And last, I have to say that the idea it improved is giving students opportunities to collaborate on SKYS, where, you group children and then they begin to respond to each other's cards. So there was an opportunity for students to discuss using SKYS, and that, that was huge. And then now with SKYS tables, it's amazing how many different opportunities you have now to create those little student-to-student discussions. So for me, it was about leveraging what's expected of the teaching learning framework and say, hey, how might you show? But, it wouldn't have worked if we all hadn't reframed why we're doing what we're doing, because we want to create these kids, we want to get them ready, and we want to make sure they collaborate, they create, and they communicate. So that's how I think our buy-in began, and as you see, 100% of our teachers use it every day. So, and then, there's also the Schoology, it syncs and all that other stuff, but it really has to do with wanting to do and present the best lessons we can for our students and have access for all of them, because we truly believe that sometimes we're not at equal playing field as other areas, and we're like, well, we're going to give the kids, what someone way out there in that community might have, but we're going to do it here. And they're on board, so it's made it easy.
Yeah, for us at Hoover, we, again, I say this very carefully. We really don't like to jump on fads. We believe we have certain structures in place, and then the question we ask is this new toy compatible with what we do? Right? We will not alter what we believe in. It's that core belief that Mrs. Arellano is talking about. And so when we saw this, we said, this is compatible with what we do. This is in alignment with our culture, a culture where on every Tuesday, we already plan through a digital format. So all of our lessons, for example, are public lessons. They are a Google, any type of Google Doc or a Google Sheet, whatever the teachers use, but they're public. And so then when Skies came around and the elements of sharing and transferring lessons or working on things on a specific lesson as a core, as a team, that resonated. And so there was coherence with the platform and what we had already had established, the structures in place. And like she's saying, and also Mr. The Garcielita, it's a tipping point, a natural curiosity that people have when you see a teacher excited about something. My weekly announcements, I would go in and I would highlight pretty much what like Julius just did, but through snipping and cutting and highlighting those elements that we were focusing on. If it was student feedback, I went in there and I cut teacher feedback. I would go in there and I would give feedback, and I still do, to our children, and I try to model the feedback. If there was engagement, I would go in and at the grade level, select models for students' language production. And so that got teachers believing, and not only, there's also that element that the principal is looking and he's sharing what other people are doing. And for some people, that's a nice motivator to step up your game. And so it was more than anything, Skies was in complete alignment with what we had done and the culture that we had of collaboration and transparency. It was a beautiful marriage between our culture and what this tool provided.
And on our end, I think one of the big things was that our teachers kept asking, can it link to Schoology? Can it link to grades? Can it link to Schoology? Can it link to grades? And also the other big thing also was student engagement, right? That the huge part of Skies were the cards, right? The slides, that the teachers can see the work. And then exactly as the other principals have said, in groups, once we were comfortable in groups and Zoom and all that, that kids can respond to each other's cards and give that feedback to each other. A big thing for us was at PDs, I would have teachers that are using it. One of our amazing science teachers, Mr. Chapman, and one of our DHH, we have quite a few teachers using it, but then one of our DHH teachers using it. So I had different subject areas show it at a PD, right? How they're using it and how it's working in their class. And that helped also the culture, right? Of more teachers trying it and working with it. And so and then our school hadn't 100%, they weren't using Schoology either. So they had 100% learned Schoology and the folders in there, and they were happy that it linked to Schoology, and they were happy about the grades, and then they were just so happy about the cards and the lessons that they could put into Sky and the students' engagement of Skies. And then, as I said, it really helped having those teacher leaders, having those PDs, and then also those teachers sharing at our PDs, going through a Skies lesson and what that would look like and make it interactive with the teachers. So I think all of that has helped at the high school level for more teachers to be using it. And that right when this happened, the biggest thing for us is, right, and all students, you know, elementary, middle, and high school, is how can we tell if the students are learning what they're learning behind the camera, right? If we can't see them. So a big part of SKIES is that right, and then our teachers knew that. We want to make sure the best of our ability that our kids are still learning. And just as you had said, right, school is closed on campus, but the learning is not closed, right? So that was another part of the buy-in of SKIES, is that it's there and we could see if the kids are learning and the standards are there and we can put the objective there. So I think that's helped to contribute to ours, and then having those teachers share out at PDs what their lessons are so other teachers can see what was going on with the SKIES.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you also mentioned the DHF, the deaf and hard of hearing. I was really blown away by your amazing deaf teacher that uses the SKIES platform, and that really made my dreams come true. A lot of you know I love sign language. So now most of us are going back to our classrooms, and I know many of you on the panel have been preparing for this all year, and so I wanted to ask, what is the transition to hybrid instruction in mid-April going to look like for you? What will classes look like, and will tech be involved in the in-person component?
Well, you know, before distance learning, we were already using SKIES in person on a regular basis. So we don't anticipate much of a change. The in-person will continue. You know, we're still going to have to keep that social distancing when we are in person. So I think SKIES lends itself very well to that, where everyone is responding, participating. I guess the only difference is, you know, the teacher doesn't have to worry about the student not having their screen closed, right? Because they're in person, so they'll be able to monitor if they're doing the work or not. So that's not going to be a big transition.
Hi, so for Quincy Jones, it is a transition because we were living in the world of a rotating cart, right? So we didn't always necessarily have a device in front of us every single day. So what I anticipate is something that I heard from one of my teachers, a very veteran teacher. She's like, oh my God, you know, once we began to do the work, she's like, I'm never going to teach the same again. I can totally see the way I don't need to do all these things, and I can actually now engage children in a different way, collect their ideas and work samples and grade them. She already knows. She knew before we even, you know, decided we're coming back in April that it's going to change her entire instruction from here on now. I anticipate 100% of my teachers continuing to use a device, not just to put them on Amplify anymore and do a few minutes of Amplify, not just to go to iExcel for a few minutes, like the way we used to do, right? I actually anticipate using the lesson sequence on SKIES and anticipate them, you know, creating their cards just like they have, continue to give children feedback immediate. But, you know, given the 6-foot distance, I can see how them having their device and being able to monitor and teach, I think this is actually, it's just going to stick with them forever. I know that they're like, are you sure you're going to budget SKIES for next year? Yes, SKIES will be budgeted for next year. We'll make sure it's there. But every single of my teachers, even the one that was the least techie, I'm 100% sure he's going to continue to use technology. Again, not just as a, here's something, research something, oh, here, type up a report, or, you know, the old traditional stuff. We're going to move it above and really kind of begin to integrate, maybe not right now in April, right? Because, you know, I think my teachers would just lose it. But, you know, next year, how might we now begin to incorporate the ITSE standards? Because we're there, and now we just have to, like, you know, name it and really begin to challenge children in different ways following the ITSE standards. But we can wait after April. I don't think they're quite ready right now. I think they just want to get their rooms ready.
I know prior to you guys surveying our teachers, I personally had asked them, how will they? I wanted to know if they were still committed. And their responses were quite shocking, as in why would you even think not to budget high skies, which is the response I wanted to hear. But I've spoken to teachers, and they, knowing that they're going to have cohort B, the PM cohort B online, and then having to be in person, I asked, well, did you see Julius's new little trick there on how to split classes? They're like, yeah, are you thinking about using that? And because every time Julius puts up those videos, I'm sure I stick it on that Schoology. Some way, somehow they're going to see professional growth. And so they said, no, well, right now I feel comfortable continuing with skies, all the elements, and I'm just going to be very careful as to what cards specific children get to see. So maybe they're not comfortable yet, but I know one area, and I just came out of a class today where they were using tables. I think tables is the next big step for us at Hoover. It's taking that step and stepping away, cutting that cord from Zoom whenever possible, and seeing the potential for greater student interaction. So I foresee us, some of those, again, it's the same concept of having those pioneers go out there into the wilderness, come back with saying, tables are working, and you should check it out. So from today's visit, I feel very comfortable that we have one at every grade level, and that's our frontier, tables for when we do return in hybrid, tables for the kids who are in the virtual world. And of course the teachers don't, like you guys said initially, it's something that's not going away, and I can only see this getting better. So skies is definitely in the mix.
So for secondary schools, right, the hybrid instruction is almost pretty much the same, meaning our kids will be in their advisory classes on their Chromebook. So to answer this question simply, really, it's going to remain the same for us, because the kids will be on their Chromebook having a skies lesson, even though they're staying in their advisory class with a teacher that may be in another class, right? So really the transition for us, there's not going to be much of a change. When it goes back to hybrid, it will stay the same.
Thank you. So there's a few months left in the year. I know you've been looking toward preparing for the future. So I'm curious if you could share some of your instructional goals looking forward to next year.
So for us, it'll be writing, continue closed reading, but also really focus on small group instruction. Trying to catch these kids up who have lost, a year of quality schooling because of the pandemic. So just focusing on differentiating for students, and some kids did really well during distance learning. They gravitated and adapted really well and are flourishing. But those kids who they don't feel comfortable, or their home environment, or they had poor connection or no connection, trying to catch those kids up. And that's going to be our focus.
Like Mario, yes, I agree. I mean, for when you look at it instructionally, foundational skills is going to be huge for Quincy Jones. I think a lot of our students may have developed gaps. We do use skies for foundational skills, so we'll definitely find different ways to embed that. Mathematics, I really want to focus on mathematics, and James has known that I really want to buy into that math packet you have there, Math PD, because I think I would love to shift my teachers using skies through the I do, you do, we do model. I think that's a very powerful model that Julius and James has to offer. I would really love to do that. Math is our Achilles heel, so I need to step it up there. And last but not least, I want to say that I have to continue building digital citizens. I think we just kind of went, boom, you have computers and here they are. And I'm still missing that piece of building responsible digital citizenship. I want to build on that, because if we're really going to use technology every day, I think we really need to, I don't want to say it was incorrectly impacted. I think we were just thrown into it, but I want to be able to correctly build digital citizenship. And what within all platforms, and begin to slowly integrate the ITSE standards, because having a device is not just about, I turn in my work, I get grades. It really is a tool to make you a global collaborator, to be creative. I mean, there's just so much more that we do with technology, and I'd like to slowly begin to leverage those items that we kind of just jumped into it and gave the kids the devices, but I'd like to backtrack and really highlight those items.
Yeah, for Hoover, it's very clear our focus will be writing. Some of these tools that have recently gone up have motivated me. The fragmenting tools, I don't know them as well as my teachers do, but writing, and I think Skies is a great tool. The chunking tool, the ability to decompose things and then to scramble things. I think that for Hoover is the area where we need to grow. The funny thing about foundational skills is that our DIBEL scores are actually better online than they were in person. So there's something about the tool of repetition, of diversifying the modality by which children are hearing sounds, or the stimuli is just varied, that it's already shown dividends. Any tool, it may be cute and all, but when it's all said and done, it's based on student learning and results. And if it were not for the results as measured, for example, by DIBELs, I wouldn't even hesitate, because it's a great tool, but are the results, are they there? And at least at Hoover, they've not gone down. As a matter of fact, they've gone up, specifically in DIBEL. So writing is where we're going, and the tools that are slowly being upgraded, I think will definitely help us in that direction.
And for us, I'm going to say our biggest instructional goals are, and we're starting that work right now, is identifying our gaps in our students' skills, right, aligned to the standards. And I'm going to use math. Our biggest areas are math and English, and to break that down, 3 of our math teachers are using Skies, actually, out of 6 right now. And believe it or not, and we were very concerned with this, our STAR, Renaissance, and our ICA has shown a 15% increase of our SBAC, which has had 4 years of declining test scores. And that is just the STAR and ICA, I know, and it's not the SBAC, but still that was a positive as far as that online, and as far as the math department really digging in, and half of the math department is using Skies, and looking at the assessments. And we're also, another big push is targeted intervention. The school has in the past just had tutoring, and we all know the research with tutoring, right? If really to increase student achievement is making it very targeted. So we are using the assessments of this year as far as the math teachers working together and collaborating on this reteaching. And part of it is Skies, because half of the math department is using Skies, right? That's 3 out of 6. Another area is also our information for English is our informational text analysis, close reading, chunking, levels of questions. And that is something that we have been and will continue to push school-wide as far as that. And we have 3 English teachers out of 7, right, using Skies. So we're going to see, right, James, I would say I want to do a survey again, right, with Skies this year, and I'm hoping, right, I'm thinking those 17 and, more teachers, we're going to get back to that as far as using it in the fall. And then we'll take it from there, right? And we'll see where we are with the Skies.
Great, thank you. So I think you guys have done a great job touching on some of these other questions. So I might move along and jump to question 9. And I think I'll combine question 9 with question 10. So maybe I'll just kind of zoom out so you can see both those questions here. We like to speculate, and I appreciate what you guys have shared, because as scientists, we also love to listen and observe. And so we look forward to continuing to improve things to help all of you guys with your goals in the future. What new possibilities, looking at something positive, what new possibilities does tech and training offer? How do you grow a culture that goes beyond surviving and toward thriving and flourishing? And what preparations have you started to make for next year?
Well, for 20th Street, we've already purchased skies for next year. So we know how valuable the program is. So we already have that purchased. As I look for funding outside of LAUSD, I'm always looking for private funders. I highlight the success that we've had with blended learning, and I feature some of the programs that we've been using. So securing funding to address the gaps that many of us have just mentioned is important. So I'm going to continue to do that, continue with professional development for the last group of teachers that came on board, but also establish the expectation that technology is not going to go away. And I think from our ETK, even PAL students all the way up to 5th grade, it's just another tool that they have at school sites. So we want to continue to fine tune our practice and, have those high expectations of our students that we're going to utilize technology and the blended learning programs to help them support their learning.
Awesome. For me, I want to continue. I mean, I really want to honor the fact that we've all been through a lot and that, it's going to be a rough start. And I want to acknowledge that, at so many levels, we've all experienced trauma. We've learned so much together this past year. And I want to continue to build that culture of like, hey, we're still learners. And, we learned so much in a year. So I want to continue to build on that and continue to nurture that, because the fact that we were lifetime learners and we were able to like open and willing to teach each other and learn, I want to, continue to build on that. And then of course, continue to instill value in what we've learned and maintain that value, that everything that we learned is valuable and we got to keep it going. So really attach importance to not forgetting a lot of these tools and how important and how it changed children's life and how it helps them. I'm definitely going to invest a lot in them, whether it's through our Monday PDs or maybe Tuesday PDs. I don't know what it's going to be called, but it really is about building their capacity and having space and time for them to engage with these, really enhance what they do with technology. And like we already funded Skies for next year, but I'd really like to invest on outside of the contractual day, right? On a Saturday, let's invest teacher X time on that, because, it's hard to learn at the end of the day. It's hard to learn on a Monday. So definitely investing a lot on those optional Saturday PDs that we had this year and continuing to build those platforms so that teachers are able to share best practices and how they're planning and how they're delivering their lessons using technology.
I want to take my learning outside of the Hoover walls. I'd like to visit, for example, those exceptional teachers. I know of one who does not use Zoom at all. And I'd like to see how this specific teacher runs tables all day and does it exceptionally well. So I'd like to some way, somehow collaborate with either my neighborhood schools to have access to view these people. I think teachers, they learn best, like they fall in love with your one-to-one people. I hear that over and over. Whenever they get to see a model teacher present something that is relevant to them, a great level appropriate to their needs, it's a winner. And so that's exactly what I think would do a whole lot more to continue the inertia in such a direction. I can, of course, ask you guys, But when anyone is above your level of expertise, you've got to find someone who's above you, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking, who's going to give me what I don't know. And I think going outside and finding those people is my next step.
You know, I think it goes with what many of you have said, right? It's giving the PDs of what's important right now. And what's important right now are the tech and the instruction and what we're doing, and social emotional, right? We've given a lot of time, a lot of PDs to social emotional, because that's highly important in meshing the both together. And I think growing the culture beyond is just that, the continual PDs, the continual encouraging and embracing the teacher leaders with technology, showing best practices, sharing best practices, whether it's as a faculty or in departments. All of that is vitally important. And right after, after spring break, we've got this, that's it, right? We got 10 weeks now. We're starting the hybrid. Not sure, right, if it's going to be hybrid in fall or full coming back. And so really utilizing the PD around the needs of the teachers, the school, and the kids, which does involve tech, which does involve teacher leaders showing the things we've been doing, right, and does involve sharing best practices and talking to each other about that for all of us to grow together.
Thank you guys so much. That concludes the questions that we prepared. I just want to thank the panelists again. I know we're all muted, so you can't hear the wonderful rounds of applause right now for you all. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I just want to let